Welcome to the third edition of First and North. I am your host this week, Lily Zhao from Milwaukee. We have a lot to talk about, so I want to bring in my esteemed panelists. Let's start with Lou Canellis in Chicago. Then we have Dan Miller in Detroit and Jim Rich in Minneapolis. And guys, we are all in the losers bracket this week. The NFC North winless, the only division in the National Football League not to win a game in Week 3. So I want to start with that Thursday night game. Rich, your Vikings at Philadelphia had perhaps chances to win the game, but fumbles certainly won't do it. And I feel like this team probably didn't predict that they were going to be 0-2 to start the year.
No, but first I want to check, has everybody eaten yet? Because the Vikings are serving up turnovers. So if anybody's got a little hunger pain, they'll be able to take care of that for you. They love to give away the football right now. They are the most generous team in the National Football League, and it's come back to kill them. Tampa Bay, they were driving, trying to get into the end zone just before half. KJ Osborne gets his pocket picked. There's an interception. It kills them. Philadelphia, same thing. Justin Jefferson diving for the pylon, loses the ball. The Vikings give away points. They just aren't in the position to do that right now. And this is how bad it is. This week, they host a winless team, the Chargers, at US Bank Stadium. The Vikings are home underdogs. Come on. Really? We're playing a winless team, and we are underdogs. That kind of sums it up, what's going on here.
Oh, that is very strange considering you guys are at home and that atmosphere. The fans will be electric. But Jim mentioned serving turnovers. I want to go to Dan. Is there any humble pie being served in Detroit after that overtime loss to the Seahawks? I mean, this team was riding high after beating the Chiefs in Week 1 on the road, and then they go home to Ford Field and put up that loss, which I know was heartbreaking for the players and fans.
Well, we were very cordial hosts. I mean, we served up turnovers as well. They led to 14 points in the second half for Seattle, and that was, a little bit too much for the Lions to overcome. Look, it felt a lot like last year when the Lions weren't winning games at the beginning of the year. It was because of mistakes that they had made. I won't take anything away from Seattle. They made some plays, but the Lions made enough plays to hurt themselves, and we've seen this before, and it's a cautionary tale about what can happen if you don't take care of the football, and that's what happened in this game. So, yeah, it was a little bit of humble pie, and Dan Campbell said those exact words. He said, I hope the guys feel this because you want them to remember what this is all about, and maybe they were riding a little bit high, but this will center you real quickly. This will bring you back because if there's anything we all know, it's that the difference between winning and losing in this league is about that much. And if you're going to make mistakes like turnovers, committing penalties, not taking advantage of your opportunities, well, then your opposition's just waiting there to pounce. And that's what Seattle did. So credit to them. They came into Detroit, probably the loudest that building has been in 7 or 8 years. Packed house. Seattle just handled their business. Detroit did not.
And I'm kind of going off of that, though. Turnovers were kind of a theme in the NFC North, minus the Green Bay Packers. Did not have a turnover there. But Lou Canellis, what's the mood in Chicago? I mean, that had to be kind of a demoralizing loss. The pick 6 from Justin Fields, 12 straight losses dating back to last year. How are people feeling in Chicago?
Yeah, it's awful right now in this town, Lily. Let me be honest with you. Coming off a 3-14 season, fans were willing to accept 3-14 and the tanking at the end of the year because we all had our sights, thanks to Lovie Smith and the Houston Texans, on that #1 pick in the draft. But, boy, what an awful start for this football franchise. I don't care what anyone says. Justin Fields does not look like he has taken a step up. Instead, 2 steps back. He looks uneasy. He is not pulling the trigger when he needs to, taking too many sacks in the pocket, not getting the ball out fast enough, and the pass rush has been nowhere to be found. We're still looking for a pass rush in this town. Remember, the Bears last season were last in the NFL in quarterback sacks with only 20. They were truly not the monsters of the Midway. They're no better this year. They had 1 quarterback hit on Baker Mayfield. Things need to change. I'm not sure it's going to happen this Sunday at Arrowhead.
Well, Lou, I want to stick with you in terms of this Bears team. When you look at that pick 6, though, these Bucs players knew it was coming because it was essentially the same play that was ran the play before. Was there any issue, in your opinion, with play calling? Has that been discussed in Chicago at all with Luke Getsy and what they're doing with that offense?
It's been discussed ad nauseum the last couple of days here in Chicago. And Luke Getsy is enemy number one, not only because of the play calling there at the end of the football game that resulted in the pick six, Lily, Dan, and Jim, but also because many feel that he has not given Justin Fields the opportunity to tuck it and run. Now, this flies in the face of what they wanted from Justin Fields this year. They came into the season, we were at training camp, he was going to be a better pocket passer. You can't run the football 160 times like he did a year ago and expect this quarterback to stay healthy all season long. I get it. He ran for over 1,100 yards. It was exciting to watch him run with the football. It's not sustainable on this level. Defensive coordinators around the NFL had the offseason to devise defensive game plans to stop him from getting to the outside and taking off. And we've seen it now for 2 weeks. First against a pretty good Green Bay defense. And say what you want about Mayfield, Mike Evans, and that Tampa Bay offense. Listen, Todd Bowles brings it defensively, and Justin Fields was confused. He had nowhere to run, 4 carries for 3 yards. Right now, yes, the play calling is being questioned, but Getsy is not going to fall on the sword. I promise you that. He's speaking to the media on Thursday. He didn't fall on the sword last week. I assure you he won't this week either. He's going to say, listen, I've called the right plays. It's just not being executed properly.
Yeah, very interesting to see and interested to hear what he's going to say on Thursday. And Jim, I'm going to go down to you, though. I feel like this is a Vikings team that, despite all the fumbles, they're probably salivating at what could have been had they not turned the ball over. And that can probably be said for every single team in the NFL, right? But when this is a team that was so good at winning those one-score games last season, is it just the law of averages? Like, what's happening in Minneapolis?
Well, last year the Vikings, as we all know, lived a charmed life. Everything that could go right for them did. So far, they haven't gotten those breaks. They've only forced 1 turnover themselves. That's a problem. But really, you look at the lines of this team. The offensive line has been a disaster. They got ripped up by the Eagles on the defensive side of the ball. They gave up 259 yards to the Eagles on the ground. So the Vikings signed Dalton Reisner out of Denver to come in and play guard. He's going to have to be all world for this team to start rushing the ball, because right now through 2 games, the Vikings have a grand total of 26 yards carrying the ball. I mean, that's not going to get it done. And contact after the handoff, number 1 in the league, just 0.7 yards. The Vikings running backs get to move before they hit contact. So those are the things that have to fix for this team, because Kirk Cousins has been fantastic. Over 700 yards, tied for the lead with Love, with touchdown passes, with 6 so far in the season. So Cousins is great. Jefferson is great. But you can't win constantly going through the air. Just like the Bears, they can't constantly have Fields running the ball. There has to be, an equilibrium here. And right now, the Vikings are nowhere near that. So 1, they got to stop the run, and 2, they got to find a way to run the ball. If they can do those 2 things, they can be okay. But pressure is building, right? Bears, you're going to be 0-3 if you lose this week. Vikings will be 0-3 if they lose this week. NFL stats, 99 teams have been 0-3 to start a season. Only 1 has made the playoffs. Now, granted, that was 16 games, not 17, wow. But you get the idea.
Well, and Jim, I know Vikings fans are frustrated, and I can't not ask about it, but Alexander Mattison had a tough game. He received a lot of hate, a lot of vulgar things said to him online after the game that I will not repeat. I know we all condemn it. The Vikings condemned it. And I think he certainly has handled that situation with grace.
Yeah, Alexander Mattison is one of the classiest guys on this team and perhaps in the entire National Football League. The kid gets it. He is so smart, understands so much, does so much good in the community. He's got his own foundation. He hosts football camps for kids. These fans are completely out of their minds. They are the biggest losers on the planet that sit there because your fantasy football team didn't win this week. Well, you know what? Who cares? Find a different way to make money, all right? Don't count on someone else to make you a winner, because obviously you're not a loser or you're not a winner when you're sitting at home writing things like that online to an NFL player or to anybody on the planet. I don't care what the guy does. This verbal assault behind the keyboards has got to go away.
Hey, Jim, if I can, it's Lou in Chicago. I just wanted to jump in real quickly and ask you a question because I've been following, obviously, misery loves company, so I'm like, at least the Vikings are 0-2, so I don't feel by myself right now at the bottom of the NFC North. But in doing my research about what you guys are going through what you guys are going through in Minneapolis, and boy, it seemed like the media, at least in Minneapolis, thinks that Risner might be the savior to help this offensive line. This is a guy that you guys brought in August and you didn't sign him. But I want to get to Kirk Cousins. And
right.
Dan and Lily, maybe chime in here, because if the winning ways continue in Minneapolis, I'm seeing articles about Cousins possibly being on the trade market for a team like Tennessee or even the Jets, who obviously lost Aaron Rodgers. Is this possible? I get it that he's, going into a free agent season, but would the Vikings give up on Cousins in the middle of the season?
Well, this is crazy, but they are on the verge of really going off the rails completely because, say they do trade Kirk Cousins. What about Justin Jefferson? You don't have that deal done. And everybody goes, well, they've got team control for another 2 years. No, Jefferson is controlling this ship. If he decides he doesn't like what he sees here, he doesn't like who his quarterback is, or he doesn't like the plan, all of a sudden he's going to say, you know what? I don't like it here anymore. We've seen this numerous times. We saw Stephon Diggs force his way out of here. So the Vikings are really walking a thin line right now. And if you do trade Cousins to the Jets, how about getting Aaron Rodgers in return along with a first-round pick? I think if the Vikings could pull that off, I think that would be something that would be palatable to Mr. Jefferson.
Oh, I love that we get to play fantasy football.
But I was going to say, Aaron Rodgers really is following in Brett Favre's footsteps if that does happen. I don't know if he would go back to the NFC North, though, but that would be something phenomenal.
Hey, if I'm the Jets, I'm lining up to get Kirk Cousins. If Minnesota said that Kirk Cousins was on the block, I would line up to get him. That's a really good team, a Super Bowl type team that isn't going to get there with the quarterback situation that they have right now. So anybody that comes available, if I'm the Jets, I'm picking up the phone and I'm making that call. But, I agree with what Jim said. I think this is a fascinating week already because Minnesota, we've talked about, is taking on an 0-2 team. Both these teams don't want to be 0-3. Both these teams, the Vikings and Chargers, thought they would be much better than that. Chargers are going to be playing for their coach's career at some point here coming up pretty soon, his job at least. Chicago and Kansas City, good luck with that, going there, playing the way that you're struggling right now. And the Chiefs have already lost one. We laid that on them. But then New Orleans and Green Bay, we'll see what happens there because, Lily, we're also looking at this thing knowing that whatever happens with the Lions in Atlanta and you and New Orleans, we got 4 days, and then we're turning around on a Thursday night and coming to Green Bay to play. So you want to be 2-1 when you get to that game. So I think already this is a really fascinating weekend in the NFC North.
I agree there, Dan, to your point. I mean, crazy. This is a Packers team that I think. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun, but you're right. The season is only, 2 weeks old, and already we're looking at 3 of the 4 teams probably being out of this if they all lose again. It's crazy how quickly this comes. Everybody says the season was so long and you got to play meaningful football in December. You got to play meaningful football in September to make December worthwhile.
Hey, Dan, let me ask you. I want to jump in because I need to hear from Dan Miller to make me feel okay about with what's going on regarding the Bears. Because Matt Eberflus said yesterday, the head coach of the Bears, Dan, that he is seeing good things on the field. He's seeing things that no one else is. That's okay because he's able to look back at the tape 4, 5, 6, half a dozen times. before he talks to the media on a Monday. All I know is this team is 0-2. We thought for sure they'd win one of these first 2 games before going to Arrowhead and getting their heads handed to them. But I think, too, what the Lions went through last season. And truthfully, the Lions are a team that grew through the year and then won, 6 of their last 8 games and ended up becoming America's darling and got off to a good start. I don't know what it is about Seattle. You give up 51 to them 2 years ago, 48 last year, and then the Seahawks with Geno Smith post 37 again. You guys got to get the Seahawks off the schedule. But make me feel okay, Dan. Matt Eberflus says they're growing, they're getting better, they'll be a better football team come midway through the season. Is it possible with this Bears squad?
Let me attack that from a couple different angles there, Lou. Number one, I've told you before, I think Justin Fields is one of the most fascinating players in the league because I think he's one of the most physically gifted players in the league. He scares you to death with what he can do for his legs, but as I have said here on First and North, and I have said to anybody that wants to talk to me about the Bears, he's got to prove that he can hit what he can throw at. And I've not been impressed with what I've seen so far this year. I was hoping to see a step. Maybe it'll still come. More directly to your question, look, I do put a little bit into what the head coach says. If Eberflus is looking at this and he sees steps that he thinks are positive, and he means it, he's not just saying it to, stop the barbarians at the gate. If he means it, then that means something. Because, look, you're right. We were 1-5 last year, and there were rumblings beginning about, are Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes the right guy? The owner, Sheila Hamp, came out in front of the media one day, completely unexpected, and said, double down. These are my guys. I believe in what we're doing. We tore this thing down to the studs. It might take a little bit of time, but I believe in what I'm seeing. They went out and lost the next week, so people were kind of mumbling, and then they did win 8 out of 10. So there are certainly times that you're not seeing the results in the standings, on TV on Sunday, but they're seeing something in terms of the improvement of the players that they're looking for. And the question is, does that at some point add up to some sort of run which will show a positive step for the organization? It's not looking that way right now. 0-2 going to Kansas City, as you alluded to, is not where anybody wants to be in the National Football League right now. But I give him the benefit of the doubt and say if he truly sees some things that he believes are getting better, then there's probably something there, because they're always going to see more than we are. They're looking at more than we are. We see wins, losses. We see the results of plays. Sometimes they see one thing that's off on that play that didn't allow it to work, and they know if they tighten that up, things can be different. So I hope your vote of confidence works a little bit better, or works as well as our vote of confidence did last year. But I will tell you, when it came, we were kind of like you, Lou. We were like, really? Okay. And then, boom, they took off.
Well, and going off it, though, Lou, this Bears team, what do they have to do to win a game? I mean, you guys haven't won a game since September of last year. I mean, we talked about the play calling. We talked about Justin Fields being a better quarterback. He hasn't made that leap like Dan mentioned, and also the defense has been abysmal as well. So is it just kind of a self-check, self-scout internally, or what do guys physically have to do in Chicago to turn it around like the Lions did last year?
Well, there's lots of praying going on in this town right now. We're actually praying that we don't lose by more than 3 touchdowns. Forget about winning. Baby steps, Lily, at this point. Now, honestly, listen, Justin Fields has to feel more comfortable in the pocket. I am going to agree with those who say he's not comfortable because he doesn't trust his offensive line, and this team has dealt with injuries on the O-line. Tevin Jenkins hopefully is back in a couple of weeks. Darnell Wright, the rookie, has played well. Cody White here has been solid. Braxton Jones, the second-year player, has really struggled at left tackle. And Lucas Patrick at center has been the worst offensive lineman in football. So right now, I agree with those who say Fields doesn't feel comfortable right now because of his offensive line. But at some point, he has to trust himself, grip it, and rip it, and throw to DJ Moore and Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, if he's healthy on Sunday, says he'll play against the Chiefs, and trust your receivers that if you get them the football, and tight end Cole Kmet, they will make things happen. Something I'd like to see happen this Sunday against Kansas City, because here, let's be realistic, and Dan saw it firsthand. The Chiefs' offense has struggled the first 2 weeks, struggled against the Lions, All right, they've given up the football, a lot of drop passes, and then posted only 17 points on Jacksonville. It's really been Kansas City's defense that's been the star, or at least last week was, with Chris Jones back. In the case of this weekend at Arrowhead, you've got to run the football. You've got to control the football and keep it out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, especially if they continue to suffer with injuries, the Bears do, in their defensive secondary, which is where they are right now. I'd like to see them run the football a little bit more, let Fields get the football out quickly. That way he can handle the pressure that he's going to get from Chris Jones and that defensive line of Kansas City's, and then just pray that your defense can hang in there with Mahomes in that passing game. The Bears' run defense was second to worst in the NFL a year ago, played really well against Tampa Bay. Not sure that's saying much because I think the Buccaneers' run game's awful to begin with. But I'm just looking for positives that we can build on as we get to Sunday in KC.
Hey, Lily, you've been so selfless by asking us about our teams. We need to know what's going on with the Packers. You're the one with a quarterback replacing a legend. You're off to a decent start. That was a tough loss on Sunday. What's going on in Green Bay?
Guys, I mean, this is, I think, they don't want to say growing pains, right? Because with a young team comes ups and downs. It comes the learning how to win on the road, learning how to prevail while getting your mouth punched in a hostile environment. They have traditionally not played well in Atlanta for some reason. It's the crowd, whatnot. But again, they faced adversity in that fourth quarter, gave up 13 unanswered points to basically lose a game that they felt like they gave away to the Falcons. I mean, this was a team that was playing quote-unquote winning football despite leaving some points on the field in that first half, going into the fourth quarter with a 12-point lead. And I think there was a stat out there, guys, that said the last time a Packers team blew a double-digit lead was the infamous 2014 NFC Championship game against the Seahawks, which Packers fans still do not like to talk about. But again, this is a learning thing for this young team as to how do you respond and move on, because when you're looking at the Saints coming into Lambeau Field, yeah, they're on a short week, but that defense is pretty darn good. They're going to get after Jordan Love. They're going to get after that football. Can this Packers offensive line protect him? Because they might have lost their Pro Bowl left guard Elton Jenkins for a couple of weeks. He confirmed he has an MCL sprain. Don't know the status of David Bakhtiari as well. So it is, can they play winning football and finish games? That's going to be the most important thing. But overall, I would say this team believes they should be 2-0. But again, like Dan mentioned, the margin of error very slim in the NFL. So that's what's happening here. We'll see the status of that offensive line and the health of many of these players as well. Again, Green Bay did not have 4 of their top offensive players in that loss to Atlanta. You have to believe if they had maybe an Aaron Jones or a Christian Watson, the outcome might have been different. But guys, we've talked about Jordan Love. I think he played as well as he could have played. He didn't win the game for Green Bay, but he didn't lose the game for Green Bay, which was a good thing. We talked about Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins, and there's Jared Goff. Dan, when you're looking at this Lions team with all the expectations this season after the way you guys played last year, like we all talked about, can he be really the guy to lead you guys into the playoffs and make it deep and make a deep run? Do you guys believe he is the guy? He's looked pretty good the first 2 weeks.
I think he can. I think but he's part of an ensemble. I don't think he's necessarily one of the quarterbacks that you look at that you say takes the team and does it and puts him on his back. He's not Brady. He's not Mahomes. He's not one of those guys. But what they've done is they've built an efficient team around him, and he's really good at finding the open guy, utilizing his weapons. 383 straight passes without an interception before this past weekend, which unfortunately went back for a pick six. Look, I think Jared Goff has earned the benefit of the doubt in Detroit, and there was a lot of doubt when he got here and a belief that he was just a bridge quarterback and somebody who was sitting there waiting for the next guy to come in. I think he's done a great job. I think, look, there's still a lot of season left, and this is a very important season for him because his contract comes into view after this year. So, you know, I think Jared has proven that you can trust him in some high leverage situations. They were down 10, final 8 minutes of the game. He got him back even and got the game to overtime this past week. So, yeah, I think, Lily, we've gone from not knowing what he is or having people just completely dismiss him to the point now where when he gets introduced this past Sunday in the home opener, people went absolutely nuts. So I think there's a lot of pro-Jared Goff people in Detroit right now. But this season, I think, is going to go a long way towards defining what he is or isn't here with the Lions.
Dan, let me dig in about this Falcons game. C.J. Gardner-Johnson out for the year. And what about David Montgomery as well?
Montgomery is listed as day-to-day with a thigh bruise. Reading the tea leaves, I just don't see him going this week. I think they're going to have to figure it out without him, which would be Jahmyr Gibbs or you know, Craig Reynolds got some carries last week. We'll see what happens. Bam Knight has been activated. We'll see what he does. But they're beat up right now. I mean, they lost James Houston in this past game. They one of their best pass rushers. They lost Hal Vaitai, one of their starting guards. You mentioned CJ, who goes down with a torn pectoral, going to be gone maybe for the season. We'll have to wait and see. Josh Paschal went down last week. Taylor Decker, their starting left tackle, didn't play this past week. Doesn't sound great for this week. We'll have to wait and see. So there's some injuries here. I do feel like they think they're in a decent spot to handle them right now, but you don't want to see any more of them because it's tough right now. The C.J. Gardner-Johnson one's tough from an emotional point of view, but you got a former team captain and a veteran safety in Tracy Walker who's ready to step into that spot. I think they feel pretty good about that. The running game is a big part of what they do. Can these guys make up for Montgomery? I think that's going to be a big part of this game against Atlanta.
I love all the talk about the Week 3 action that we saw. I want to pivot now to Week 4. We have a lot of good games on the docket. We've talked about a couple of them. But, Jim, I think the Vikings and the Chargers, like you alluded to earlier, they're both 0-2. But I think this is the most tantalizing NFC North game this week. I mean, this is a Chargers team that just finds ways to lose, and they also give up yards through the air. So is this perhaps a game where Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson just have a field day?
They've already had a field day. Every week, those two are on fire right now. And really, the big thing is the Chargers have given up over 31 points per game in the first 2 weeks of the season. So that's going to make you believe that the Vikings should be able to move the ball. But they've got to fix this running game. They've got to figure out a different way. Is it Alexander Mattison not being as explosive as Dalvin Cook? Because when Cook was here, teams had to pay attention to Dalvin because if the first guy missed, all of a sudden it was real trouble. He could take it all the way to the end zone. Alexander Mattison has not shown that. The Vikings' longest run from scrimmage this year is 9 yards. So that's not going to get it done. Defenses aren't going to bite because Cousins succeeds a lot of times when he does the RPOs, when they fake this, when they fake that. Well, if they don't even care about the running game or respect it, they're just going to tee off, get to Cousins, and double and triple Jefferson, and you can take the Vikings offense off its game. So they've got to figure out, I mean, how quickly Reisner can get acclimated, get into with his groove with this team. We'll see. He's been jonesing to get here. He's been putting on social media, departing flights and shooting pictures of Minneapolis, and not today, and he just wanted to be here so bad. So let's hope this 312-pound behemoth can make a big difference for that offensive line.
Hey, guys, let me just jump in real quick. I wanted to share some pain with you that we suffer with here in Chicago coming off of Jim's comments about Justin Jefferson. I saw, Jim, that Jefferson became the 9th player in Vikings history to rack up 5,000 career receiving yards, and only 4 other franchises, the Packers, we know what Aaron and Brett Favre have done, the Broncos, Chiefs, and Cardinals have more. By the way, in Chicago, we have the lowest amount of 5,000-yard receivers in the course of, you know, one of the founding franchises here. Johnny Morris, he is our only 5,000-yard career receiving wide receiver in this town. I don't want to hear anyone ever complain about not having wideouts on their squad. No one suffers like us Bears fans.
We're sorry, Lou. I think
true.
you guys are going to suffer more with the Chiefs. And quickly here, Dan, Lions, Falcons, who's winning?
Nobody wants to hear me make a prediction because if the play-by-play guy says they're going to lose, they're not happy. And if I say they're going to win, I'm just a stupid homer. Look, it's at home. We can't afford to lose 2 consecutive home games. Atlanta's off to a really nice start. This is their first road game. Key for the Lions is going to be stopping Bijan Robinson, who looks absolutely fantastic so far. They've been pretty good against the run. Did a nice job against Pacheco in game 1. Did a nice job in game number 2 this past weekend, slowing down Walker and the rest of the Seahawks running backs. That's going to be job 1. They got to put the game on Ritter. Then they got to find some way to get some pass pressure because that has been missing so far. They didn't get Mahomes on the ground, although I thought they affected him. They did not affect Geno Smith. He was very comfortable back there. Can't do that again. So those are the keys. If the Lions can do some of those things, and I think they're capable, they'll come out with a win at home.
And I won't say I'm a homer here with this pick, but I think the Packers do beat the Saints at home in their home opener. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for all the excellent analysis, and we'll see how the NFC North does in Week 4. That does it for this edition of First and North. We'll see you guys next week.